desirable, and so he adopted it into his own teaching. Now, even though this walking relieves the stiffness in your legs, such relief is to be regarded as a mere byproduct and not the main object of kinhin. Accordingly, those of you who are counting your breaths should continue during kinhin, and those of you who are working on a koan should carry on with it. This ends the first lecture. Continue to count your breaths as I have instructed until you come before me again. 2. Precautions to observe in Zazen. In this second lecture I am going to change your breathing exercise slightly. This morning I told you to count 1 as you inhaled and 2 as you exhaled. Hereafter I want you to count 1 only on the exhalation, so that 1 full breath, inhalation and exhalation, will be 1. Don't bother counting the inhalations. Just count 1, 2, 3, and so forth, on the exhalation. It is advisable to do Zazen facing a wall, a curtain, or the like. Don't sit too far from the wall nor with your nose up against it. The ideal distance is from 2 to 3 feet. Likewise, don't sit where you have a sweeping view, for it is distracting, or where you look out on a pleasant landscape, which will tempt you to leave off Zazen in order to admire it. In this connection, remember that although your eyes are open you are not actually trying to see. For all these reasons it is wisest to sit facing a wall. However, if you happen to be doing Zazen formally in a Rinzai temple, you will have no choice but to sit facing others, as this is the established custom in that sect. In the beginning, if possible, select a room that is quiet as well as clean and tidy, one which you can regard as special. It may be asked whether it is satisfactory to do Zazen on a bed so long as the room is clean and free from noise. For the ordinary healthy person the answer is no. There are any number of reasons why it is difficult to keep the mind in proper tension on a bed. A bedridden person, of course, has no choice. You will probably find that natural sounds, like those of insects or birds or running water, will not disturb you, neither will the rhythmic ticking of a clock nor the purring of a motor. Sudden noises, however, like the roar of a jet, are jarring. But rhythmic sounds you can make use of. One student of mine actually attained enlightenment by utilizing the sound of the steady threshing of rice while he was doing Zazen. The most objectionable sounds are those of human voices, either heard directly or over the radio or television. When you start Zazen, therefore, find a room which is distant from such sounds. When your sitting has ripened, however, no noises will disturb you. Besides keeping your room clean and orderly, you should decorate it with flowers and burn incense, since these, by conveying a sense of the pure and the holy, make it easier for you to relate yourself to Zazen and thus to calm and unify your mind more quickly. Wear simple, comfortable clothing that will give you a feeling of dignity and purity. In the evening it is better not to wear night clothes, but if it is hot and a question of either doing Zazen in pajamas or not doing it at all, by all means wear the pajamas. But make yourself clean and tidy. The room ought not to be too light or too dark. You can put up a dark curtain if it is too light, or you can use a small electric bulb if it is night. The effect of a dark room is the same as closing your eyes. It dulls everything. The best condition is a sort of twilight. Remember, Buddhist Zazen does not aim at rendering the mind inactive but at quieting and unifying it in the midst of activity. A room with plenty of fresh air, that is neither too hot in summer nor too cold in winter, is ideal. Punishing the body is not the purpose of Zazen, so it is unnecessary to struggle with extremes of heat or cold. Experience has shown, however, that one can do better Zazen when one feels slightly cool. Too hot a room tends to make one sleepy. As your ardor for Zazen deepens, you will naturally become unconcerned about cold or heat. Nevertheless, it is wise to take care of your health. Next, let us discuss the best time for Zazen. For the eager and determined, any time of day and all seasons of the year are equally good. But for those who have jobs or professions, the best time is either morning or evening, or better still, both. Try to sit every morning, preferably before breakfast, and just before going to bed at night. But if you can sit only once, and you should sit at least once a day, you will have to consider the relative merits of morning and evening. Each has its advantages and disadvantages. If you find that either morning or evening is equally good and you ask which I recommend, because you can sit only once a day, I would say the morning, for the following reasons. No visitors come early in the morning, whereas in the evening you are likely to be interrupted. Also, morning, at any rate, in the city, is much quieter than evening since fewer cars are on the streets. Furthermore, because in the morning you are rested and somewhat hungry, you are in good condition for zazen, whereas in the evening, when you are tired and have had your meal, you are likely to be duller. Since it is difficult to do zazen on a full stomach, it is better not to sit immediately after a meal when you are a beginner. Before a meal, however, zazen can be practiced to good advantage. As your zeal grows, it won't matter when you sit, before, after, or during a meal. How long should you do zazen at one sitting? There is no general rule, for it varies according to the degree of one's eagerness as well as the maturity of one's practice. For novices, a shorter time is better. If you sit devotedly 5 minutes a day for a month or two, you will want to increase your sitting to 10 or more minutes as your ardor grows. When you are able to sit with your mind taut for, say, 30 minutes without pain or discomfort, you will come to appreciate the feeling of tranquility and well-being induced by zazen and will want to practice regularly. For these reasons, I recommend that beginners sit for shorter periods of time. On the other hand, should you force yourself from the beginning to sit for longer periods, the pain in your legs may well become unbearable before you acquire a calm mind. Thus you will quickly tire of zazen, feeling it to be a waste of time, or you will always be watching the clock. In the end you will come to dislike zazen and stop sitting altogether. This is what frequently happens. Now, even though you sit for only 10 minutes or so each day, you can compensate for this briefness by concentrating intensely on the counting of each breath, thus increasing its effectiveness. You must not count absent-mindedly or mechanically, as though it were a duty. In spite of your being able to sit for an hour or more with a feeling of exquisite serenity, it is wise to limit your sitting to periods of about 30 or 40 minutes each. Ordinarily it is not advisable to do zazen longer than this at one sitting, since the mind cannot sustain its vigor and tautness and the value of the sitting decreases. Whether one realizes it or not, a gradual diminution of the mind's concentrative intensity takes place. For this reason it is better to alternate a 30 or 40-minute period of sitting with a round of walking zazen. Following this pattern, one can do zazen for a full day or even a week with good results. The longer zazen continues, however, the more time should be spent in walking zazen. In fact, one might advantageously add periods of manual labor to this routine, as has been done in the Zen temple since olden times. Needless to say, you must keep your mind in a state of clear awareness during such manual labor and not allow it to become lax or dull. A word about food. It is better to eat no more than 80% of your capacity. A Japanese proverb has it that 8 parts of a full stomach sustain the man. The other 2 sustain the doctor. The Zazen Yojinki. Precautions to observe in Zazen. Compiled about 650 years ago, says you should eat 2/3 of your capacity. It further says that you should choose nourishing vegetables. Of course, meat eating is not in the tradition of Buddhism, and it was taboo when the Yojinki was written. Such as mountain potatoes, sesame, sour plums, black beans, mushrooms, and the root of the lotus. And it also recommends various kinds of seaweed, which are highly nutritious and leave an alkaline residue in the body. Now, I am no authority on vitamins and minerals and calories, but it is a fact that most people today eat a diet which creates too much acid in the blood, and a great offender in this respect is meat. Eat more vegetables of the kind mentioned, which are alkalinic in their effect. In ancient days there was a yang-yin diet. The yang was the alkaline and the yin the acid, and the old books caution that a diet ought not be either too yang or too yin. This is substantially what I have just told you. There comes a point in your sitting when insights about yourself will flash into your mind. For example, relationships that previously were incomprehensible will suddenly be clarified and difficult personal problems abruptly solved. If you don't jot down things that you want to remember, this could bother you and so interfere with your concentration. For this reason, when you are sitting by yourself, you may want to keep a pencil and notebook next to you. 3. Illusory visions and sensations. This is the third lecture. Before I begin, I will assign you a new way of concentration. Instead of counting your exhalations, as heretofore, count 1 on the first inhalation, 2 on the next inhalation, and so on, up to 10. This is more difficult than counting on the exhalation, because all mental and physical activity is performed on the exhaled breath. For instance, just before pouncing, animals take a breath. This principle is well known in kendo fencing and judo, in which one is taught that by carefully observing his opponent's breathing, his attack can be anticipated. While this exercise is difficult, you must try to practice it as another means of concentrating your mind. Until you come before me again, you are to concentrate on counting the inhalations of your breath, not audibly but in the mind only. It is not advisable, however, to follow this practice for long. If you are working by yourself, a week would be sufficient. Makyo are the phenomena: visions, hallucinations, fantasies, revelations, illusory sensations. Which one practicing Zazen is apt to experience at a particular stage in his sitting. Ma means devil and kyo the objective world. Hence makyo are the disturbing or diabolical phenomena which appear to one during Zazen. These phenomena are not inherently bad. They become a serious obstacle to practice only if one is ignorant of their true nature and is ensnared by them. The word makyo is used in both a general and a specific sense. Broadly speaking, the entire life of the ordinary person is nothing but a makyo. Even such bodhisattvas as Monju and Kannon, highly developed though they are, still have about them traces of makyo. Otherwise they would be supreme Buddhas, completely free of makyo. One who becomes attached to what he or she realizes through satori is also still lingering in the world of makyo. So, you see, there are makyo even after enlightenment, but we shall not enter into that aspect of the subject in these lectures. In the specific sense, the number of makyo which can appear are in fact unlimited, varying according to the personality and temperament of the sitter. In the Ryogon Surangama Sutra, the Buddha warns of 50 different kinds, but of course he is referring only to the commonest. If you attend a sesshin of from 5 to 7 days duration and apply yourself assiduously, on the third day you are likely to experience makyo of varying degrees of intensity. Besides those which involve the vision, there are numerous makyo which relate to the sense of touch, smell, or hearing, or which sometimes cause the body suddenly to move from side to side or forward and backward, or to lean to one side, or to seem to sink or rise. Not infrequently words burst forth uncontrollably, or, more rarely, one imagines he is smelling a particularly fragrant perfume. There are even cases where without conscious awareness one writes down things which turn out to be prophetically true. Very common are visual hallucinations. You are doing Zazen with your eyes open when suddenly the ridges of the straw matting in front of you seem to be heaving up and down like waves. Or without warning everything may go white before your eyes, or black. A knot in the wood of a door may suddenly appear as a beast or demon or angel. One disciple of mine often used to see visions of masks. Demons' masks or jesters' masks. I asked him whether he had ever had any particular experience of masks, and it turned out that he had seen them at a festival in Kyushu 36 when he was a child. Another man I knew was extremely troubled in his practice by visions of Buddha and his disciples walking around him reciting sutras, and was only able to dispel the hallucination by jumping into a tank of ice-cold water for 2 or 3 minutes. Many makyo involve the hearing. One may hear the sound of a piano or loud noises, such as an explosion. which is heard by no one else, and actually jump. One disciple of mine always used to hear the sound of a bamboo flute while doing zazen. He had learned to play the bamboo flute many years before, but had long since given it up. Yet always the sound came to him when he was sitting. In the Zazen Yojinki we find the following about makyo. The body may feel hot or cold or glass-like or hard or heavy or light. This happens because the breath is not well harmonized with the mind, and needs to be carefully regulated. It then goes on to say, one may experience the sensation of sinking or floating, or may alternately feel hazy and sharply alert. The disciple may develop the faculty of seeing through solid objects as though they were transparent, or he may experience his own body as a translucent substance. He may see Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Penetrating insights may suddenly come to him, or passages of sutras which were particularly difficult to understand may suddenly become luminously clear to him. All these abnormal visions and sensations are merely the symptoms of an impairment arising from a maladjustment of the mind with the breath. Other religions and sects place great store by experiences which involve visions of God or deities or hearing heavenly voices, performing miracles, receiving divine messages, or becoming